friends, and welcome back to our homestead. Today we've decided to make homemade mead, or as we call it in my language, Medovuha. And that is because we're going to be using honey. Look at this beautiful honey. So we're going to be using local, unfiltered, well, it is a little filtered, I guess, but it's local, raw honey from our bees. So we've decided to make Medovuha mead because it's one of those ancient drinks that, you know, has been consumed for generations. And it's a super easy thing to make, and it can be consumed in a month, or it can be consumed in a year or 6 months. And it's gonna have little alcohol, so it's not for kids. But yeah, let's make it. So let's make it today. So the concentration I'm going to be using today, and by the way, I'm not going to be boiling water. It's not going to be a heated process. It's going to be a cold process. I'm going to be using concentration of 1 quart of honey, okay, 1 quart of honey, which is 2 pounds of honey, to 1 gallon of filtered clean water. If you guys have no access to clean water, unchlorinated water, I suggested finding a good quality filtered water, okay? We have well water, so that's what we're going with. So I'm gonna be using a big 5-gallon food grade bucket. Why? Because either it can be done in one of those old-fashioned ceramic crocks, really big ones, or plastic or glass, but never metal. Not in the metal. So I'm making a big batch because I have 5 jars of honey that I want to use up. Okay, so I have 5 beautiful jars of honey here, and yeah, so I'm going to be using a big 5-gallon bucket. So again, 1 quart, 2 pounds to 1 gallon of water. I'm not going to be using yeast. I'm not going to be using any kind of additional yeast. So I need to bring natural wild yeast. And that, my friend, is going to be done by using organic raisins. Okay? So, I mean, a handful of raisins per gallon. I don't know, it's a very scientific measurement. But a handful, so about 10, maybe 50, 12, 15 can go for 1 gallon of water. But I'm going to be doing more, so I have more raisins here. So this is going to be a few step process. So let me show you things that we're going to be using today. Well, as I've said, we're going to start everything in the food grade bucket, big 5-gallon bucket. I forgot to mention that everything has to be very clean, hands very clean, and everything has to be disinfected, okay? Very important, because we don't want to bring bad bacteria into this whole situation. We don't want bad things to start growing. Okay, so I filled up this bucket, and I'm thinking, this is a 5-gallon bucket, and I'm thinking that after I add all of this honey, I'm not going to have enough space. So we shall see what happens. All right, so the temperature of water. It's not cold and it's not hot. It's slightly warm. Why? Because sometimes it's difficult to dissolve honey in cold water, okay? But it's definitely not boiled. I'm definitely not boiling anything, and honey should not be boiled either. We want to preserve as many medicinal and natural enzymes in the honey as they are. Okay, so I have 5 gallons of water, and I'm going to start putting all of my honey in there, okay? I'm going to be scooping it, and it's going to take me a little while, and I'm going to be scooping it, and I'm hoping, Lord have mercy, that I actually have enough space in here for all of this honey, because in a couple of days, Lord willing, we're going to start seeing some fizzing happening, because the natural wild yeast is going to start producing its CO2, and we should see some bubbles on the top. Now, one of the important things is that it should be done in a warmer environment. I want to say like 70, 80 degree temperature space. So it is summer months right now. It is middle to late July. So here in New England, we have no problem with staying nice and warm. All right. The nights are a little cooler than days, but still quite hot and humid. So I'm going to keep it in my house because wild yeast likes a little bit of heat, warmth to begin to activate and develop. So like I said, it's going to take me a little while to scoop everything in here. I made sure that my hands are clean and washed, my bucket is clean, my spoons are clean and everything, okay? And then I can tell you already, it's probably not going to fit everything in here. We'll see. All right, so it's going to take a few days. And I like to keep it in a dark place. It's going to be in a dark place, but this bucket is already a bucket, so nothing is going to penetrate as far as the light into it. But the very important thing is, you probably know that little bugs and flies and ants love sweetness. So you got to protect this from bugs and ants from entering. So you got to think about a way to cover this bucket so there's still natural yeast happening on the inside, so it's not airtight, but again, that you're protecting it. So covering it nicely with a towel or cheesecloth or something like that. So again, there's some airflow happening, but bugs are not getting in because we don't want them to mess everything up. Well, that's a sticky job, but someone has to do it. All right, so I have this gigantic long spoon. Look how cool it is. I got it from an antique store in Pennsylvania. So now I'm just gonna stir it all because the heavy honey fell to the bottom of the bucket, and I'm just gonna stir this so everything is nicely dissolved. And it may take me a minute or two because this water is not very hot. I mean, it's warm. Oh my goodness, so sweet. So I'm gonna stir this all up, make sure it's nicely dissolved, okay? And it's gonna, like I said, it needs few days. So I'm gonna be keeping an eye on it. And I'm gonna be stirring it every day, agitating it every day, okay? Making sure that wild yeast works through the entire bucket. All right, I think it's dissolving nicely. The color of the water changed. Oh no, I spoke too fast. I still see pieces of honey clumps on the bottom. So let me stir this all up. I gotta stir, maybe I should agitate in a different directions so that will help without spilling it all over the place. Because let me tell you, the ants will show up. I don't know, do they smell it? Do they sense it? Do they have like sugar antennas? How do they find sugar? I don't know, but they sure do, and quickly too. All right, so I'm just gonna, let me check. Yeah, still a little bit left. So I'm gonna make sure it's all stirred up. Okay, so a long wooden pallet or stick would work. All right, so this looks good. Let me give it a test. A few pieces left, but not bad at all. All right, so like I've said to you, this is gonna take some time, okay? Mead is not done in a day. And you know, I was looking at some sources, and the Vikings used to make mead all the time. That was like the drink of choice, right? Oh yeah, it's dissolved beautiful. And my people made Medovuha as well, made out of mead, out of honey. Okay, I spoke lots about wild yeast, right? So there's some in honey, in raw honey, because especially if it's unfiltered, unprocessed, there's some particles that are left from wildflowers in this honey. But not to chance it, I'm gonna add something to help it out. So I have, it's about a half a cup in here. So for all of my 5 gallon, I'm gonna be using organic, untreated raisins. And I'm gonna putting them in here. And see, raisins on their skins will have some small amount of wild yeast. I know some people put freshly picked and dried berries they put in here, because as long as they are unwashed, there's wild yeast on the skins of blueberries, blackberries, grapes, you name it. as long as they're unwashed. They cannot be washed because washing will actually wash off the natural wild yeast. So it's in here. And what I'm gonna do now is I have a clean towel here. I need to cover this up. I need to cover it up, making sure that no bugs get inside. And for a whole week, so about 7-10 days, I'm gonna be coming in here every day and stirring it all the way from the bottom up a few times, making sure that there is aeration going on and wild yeast is circulating through the entire bucket. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on the top. If I don't see any bubbles on top, that means it needs to keep on working. It needs more time. But if I see that the bubbles beginning to bubble up, then I'm gonna move on to the next step. Now this first step, as I'm telling you, may take 7 days, may take 10 days, or it may take 2 weeks. Now, like I said, right now it's nice and warm. It's about 74 in our kitchen. So 74, and I'm gonna keep it in the bucket, cover this up, somewhere in a corner where nobody's touching it except for me stirring it every day. All right, so I will see you guys on step 2. Okay, friends, almost 2 months later, this is what it looks like. I've decided to throw a plastic cover over, and we've been burping it because it would swell up like this because CO2 is collecting inside. So now it's no longer swelling up. That means I think all the fermentation is done. And just yesterday, I've decided to check the amount of alcohol in it, and I was quite surprised. It's a lot of alcohol in it. It showed 45% alcohol. I don't think that's what mead's supposed to be. I don't think so. But anyway, so this is what it looks like. It's a very pleasant color. Do you see all those tiny little specks floating on top? That's yeast floating on top. And all of these nice swelled up raisins, that's what gave us the yeast. And I gave it a taste. It's actually very pleasant taste. It smells good. It looks good. But I think it's a little stronger than originally designed to be. But from what I've been reading about, it says that Viking mead can be anything from 8% and much, much higher. So the longer it sits, the more stronger it will be. And the more honey you put in, the stronger mead will be. Listen, friends, if you're good at making meads, please share your knowledge. This is something that we need to pass on to the next generation because I'm learning. This is my first time doing this. All right, so next step is it's no longer fermenting. I know it stopped fermenting. I don't see the bubbling up anymore. I need to remove all this stuff on top. Make sure that I remove all these little white specks. So we're gonna filter it a little bit and we're gonna put it all into the bottles. And we have these bottles we got ready. So these are 17-ounce bottles, glass bottles with nice little covers. I got online on Amazon. If you guys are interested where I got them, I can share the link with you. So feel free to go onto that link and purchase it. I'm not sponsored by anybody, but I just wanna show you. All right, so we need to work on this mead. And like I said, we need to filter it and we need to take this out. And I know for a fact I'm gonna have some sediment on the bottom. So I made sure I didn't stir it in the last few days at all. And so we need to siphon it out and filter it out. So the first step, I'm gonna scoop all of this stuff on top. All right, so let's just scoop all of this out first, because it did its job. It gave the natural yeast. I didn't add any yeast packets at all. And I have to say, it smells strong. In the first few days of fermentation, it smelled a lot like kvass. So anybody who came from Eastern European countries, you know what kvass is. It's that drink that very lightly fermented, and it's made on bread, on beautiful rye bread. But this is mead now. It's not clear. It's slightly, maybe because it still needs to settle a little bit more. Oh, one just flew up. All right. It's not as clear as you think. So let me scoop a little bit. I'll show you. Do you see it's still a little, it's not very clear. All right, so let's start scooping this out and filtering it out. Okay, so we're gonna siphon this into another clean bucket, and I'm gonna put a filter on top. Okay, it's gonna fit on top. And just to help to catch some of those little particles of yeast, I'm gonna just throw in several times folded cheesecloth, okay? And I'm gonna use a little hose, and this is, don't laugh, but this is a tubing, oxygen tubing. I just cut off the nose piece, so we're gonna be using the oxygen tubing. And I'm gonna put this bucket on the floor to allow the gravity to go down into the clean bucket. So let's try this. My first time, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm gonna lower this in, but I don't wanna put all the way to the bottom. I'm gonna put somewhat halfway, and I'm gonna do the old-fashioned way. Just and let it go. And it's going. Okie dokie. So it's gonna take a while because it's a small tubing. Oh, wait. It's a small tubing. I mean, if you guys have a bit bigger tubing, it's better. I need to do this one. It fell out. Hold on a second. It fell out. Completely fell out. Maybe I should have taped it or something. I don't know. Because I don't want to put it all the way to the bottom either, because it's going to start scooping up. See, it's lifting up. It's delicious. Okay, so let this keep on dripping. Keep on dripping and filtering at the same time. So I just want to make sure that this tubing is not all the way to the bottom, because there could be sediment on the bottom and I don't want it to be stirred up and start coming up. I only want the mead itself, because I'm sure there's going to be some sort of a sediment from fermentation process that may be on the bottom. Yeah, so this is going to be a little while. I'm going to be patient and let it strain up, and then we're going to bottle it. Okay, seems like there's sediment on the bottom and some of those raisins are sitting in the bottom. I think I'm going to stop siphoning. It's about 1 inch left on the bottom, and I'm going to stop here. I don't know if you can see, there's definitely stuff on the bottom, so I'm glad I did not go all the way down to the bottom. That's cloudy stuff, should stay behind. All right, so this is what it looks like strained. It's still not as crystal clear. It's still kind of like cloudy a little bit. So maybe over time, whilst it's sitting in bottles, it will become clearer, but I'm perfectly fine with the way it is. Okay, let's start bottling. So I'm just gonna pour it into my clean bottles. They're nicely disinfected, and I'm not gonna pour all the way to the top, just in case it decides to ferment a little bit. I don't want my bottles to explode, so I think I'm gonna leave about 1 inch or so at the top. Let me see. Let me try to close it. Yeah, I think that should be good. See those bubbles running? Can you see them? Can you see those bubbles running? Isn't that fun? All right, so I'm gonna close it. Okay, so let me fill up the rest of this beautiful gathering over here, and then I'll show you and give it a taste as well. Okay, so we've got 31 bottles of this beautiful mead. I love the color, and I think it's time to taste it. This one is not completely full, so I'm gonna open it up and let's give it a taste. It smells, I'm telling you guys, if you grew up in cultures that made kvass, this smells like kvass. It's very sweet. It's still very sweet. It's a little tangy. It has a little bite, but it's really, really enjoyable. So I think those Vikings knew what they were doing. So like I said, you know, this was only 2 months of fermentation, and now these bottles are gonna go into a cool place. Cool place. So where the fermentation can stop doing its thing, okay? Because the more they ferment, the stronger alcohol in them will be, and we don't want that. So we're gonna put them in a cool place like a basement, cellar, refrigerator, garage, something cool. And it's perfect because it's already September, so it's perfect. So friends, I hope you are encouraged to make some homemade mead. You never know when you may need something to exchange with or barter with someone, even if you don't consume alcohol, because you never know if it's gonna come in handy. So friends, I hope you are encouraged and try something new. Cheers.